Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe that most high net worth individuals and their professional team struggle to find great capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the Deferred Sales Trust is the best way to create and preserve more wealth. I'm your co-host, Pearson York, filling in for Brett Swarts. In each episode, I'm joined by some of the best wealth, business, real estate, and leadership individuals in the world to share ideas, deal stories, and inspiration. So together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. We're streaming on expertcresecrets.com, Capital Gains Tax Solutions YouTube channel, the Kingdom Luxury Realty YouTube channel, Kingdom Luxury Realty Facebook channel, and the Capital Gains Tax Solutions Facebook channel as well. I'm very excited about our next guest. He's been in multifamily investing for the past 15 years. They currently have at least 1,400 doors and almost 200 million in assets under management. A very sophisticated, very smart real estate multifamily investor, Mr. Bronson Hill. Bronson, how are you doing today, my friend?
Hey, Pearson, really excited to be with you today. Love talking about investing, love talking about deferring or paying no taxes at all, which is just, I think, something more people should be curious about. I don't know why people are not just spending all of their time trying to figure out how to pay less taxes. So I love that you're doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And another shameless plug for you. I forgot to mention that you're the show host for the Mailbox Money podcast. So we're in the presence of greatness right now, people. So
I don't know if greatness, but I have some fun talking about it. I think really just trying to provide a lot of value to people just like you guys. I mean, like you're doing as well. So
cool.
It's awesome.
All right. Well, I'm super excited to get into this. But first, before we do, tell people how you kind of got to where you are today.
Yeah, so I was a well-paid professional. I was making over $200,000 a year doing medical device sales. I would go into surgery and consult heart surgeons on how to use their specialized devices. Did that kind of in that field for about 10 years. And I realized a couple of things. I realized that one, I was working too hard and I was making somebody else a lot of money. And every time I have a great quarter, they get a little slap on the butt and they'd say, go out and do it again. And it was always a bigger, better. It was always a chase. And I was never really growing equity. I was just simply doing a time for money trade. And I realized a lot of physicians that I worked with also did a lot of the same thing, where they were sometimes working 60 or 80 hours a week. Some would get paid over $1 million a year, but they didn't have ownership of their time. So that's why I really started to research and get interested in passive investing, particularly in real estate, because you could actually make more money consistently. You could grow your wealth. And I'm not talking about a transactional sale like becoming a real estate agent or doing flipping, but where you actually own large apartments. And it's actually, I discovered it's actually not as hard as I thought it would be to both be an investor in on that or to actually help other investors get on it as well. And one of the things I love about it, which really ties into this show, is it allows you to basically defer or write off any taxes that you have until there's a sale. And at least with the current tax laws, you can continually write off those gains into the future, which is just really awesome things. So it's not just how much you make, it's how much you keep. And I realized, instead of making 200,000, I could make maybe 130 or 140,000 and it'd be about the same amount of money because I wasn't paying taxes on it. So I started doing that and I was able to actually leave my kind of corporate consulting role last year, which was awesome. So even though it was very lucrative, a lot of people can relate with the idea of the golden handcuffs. Is just the job is just too good to leave, or maybe they're further along in their career and they feel like, man, I would love to spend more time with family, but I just can't quite figure out how to make that transition. Well, passive investing in multifamily real estate is a way to do it. And also it helps us save a lot of taxes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you are in medical sales and drop that, because that's exactly what I did about 8 months ago.
Okay.
So yeah, left
Congrats.
same situation. Left the $200,000 to $250,000 job and just took a full dive into real estate. So I'm totally with you on.
Yeah, I realized, it's actually one of the most valuable things you can learn. A lot of times it's like we think, oh, this just seems totally different and new, and how could I ever do something like this? But what it allows you to do is when you develop the skill of passively investing, and if as an investor, I know I can about double my money every 5 to 6 years conservatively, which is very doable with real estate, and it's particularly with multifamily. It gives you the confidence to know that you can have income and you can actually hedge inflation, especially as they're printing money like crazy, buying assets that hedge inflation really well, like multifamily real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot to unpack there, and I'm real excited to dig into this. But before we do, I want to just take one more step back, and I believe everyone's given a certain set of gifts or strengths. I call them spiritual gifts. Um, Other people call them whatever. But what are one or two spiritual gifts or strengths that you have that have let you be successful today?
Well, there is a saying that God made only so many perfect heads, and He covered the rest with hair. So the fact that I'm bald may be one, but on a more serious note, other than that, I think my kind of secret sauce or my special gift to the world is I'm really good at connecting with people. I'm really good
Yeah,
at building relationships. I think the sales background really helped with that a lot,
for
but
sure.
really trying to find a way to connect with people and really add value. And I think there's something to it is when I first started doing sales years ago, and you may be able to relate with this as well, is that, I would just go and tell people everything that I had. Here's all the great stuff my product does. Here's all the stuff I can do for it. I wasn't getting very far. And what I realized was, it's that old saying, people don't care what you know until they know that you care or don't know how much
Yeah,
you care. And so when I started taking interest and I would just ask questions and I would really be curious about, what really this other person needed or who they were or the problems they were facing, it really allowed me to be in the position of a helper where I could really help people to help solve problems. So I've realized, like, if you are someone who just simply adds value, if you're someone who just comes around other people and says, "Hey, I want to try to help solve problems," it's amazing how many doors can open. And so, to me, I think that's something that I've learned. But I think just kind of a natural skill is being able to connect with people, being able to build relationships, and just really try to bring value.
yeah, absolutely. I love that because, yeah, I learned real quickly that questions is the language of sales. So if you're not asking
Yeah,
questions and you're not really digging into what their actual problems are, mm, you go up and you product dump. Ugh, is the
yeah.
worst. I can't tell you how many meetings I've walked out of where I just was like, put my head down, just like, crap, dude, I blew that one. Like,
Yeah. Well, I think it's kind of like a human bias. We really spend a lot of time in our own head, and we just approach the world just looking at everything. It's like when someone's speaking, I'm already thinking of what I'm going to say next in response to them, right? I'm not actually
yeah,
sitting and listening and empathize and say, "Oh, it sounds like you're really stressed at work," or "It sounds like you're trying to pay less taxes," or so I'm really trying to listen. And I think when people come around people, it's some of the best people that excuse me are in sales are very they're not salesy. I think of like used car salesy where it's like, hey, you look
yeah,
great in this nice 1972 Buick, right? But they're just very helpful, and they're really good at drawing out kind of what's in someone's heart, and even showing somebody a solution that they don't know they need. Like for you guys, you're showing people that, hey, you're paying too much taxes. A lot of people, so the majority, 90% of people have no idea that you can't even pay less taxes, that that's even
yeah,
possible to defer taxes or to pay no taxes at all. I mean, I've paid pretty much no income tax over the last 3 or 4 years as something called a real estate professional. So there's different ways there, and they're not loopholes. They're actually incentives the government provides so that you can provide value to others. So I think it's just great, when you can grow and you can learn, you can ask questions, you can really try to get value, or try to really understand where someone's coming from, then it allows you to empathize and really bring a solution that can really help really where they're at.
yeah, absolutely. So how does that help you in real estate syndications today?
Yeah, well, I've actually spoken individually with over 1,200 millionaires one on one over a period of about 2.5 years. And so I
That'll
find
do
there's
it.
there's a lot. The average net worth is about 2 million, and there's very common problems. A lot of common things that I see is, people are very busy. They have no time, or maybe they're retired and they want to spend more time with family. And so the idea of passive income or passive investing is very appealing because it actually allows you to grow your wealth without taking up more of your time. If you own a rental house or 5 rental houses, it's going to be overwhelming to think about doubling the size of your portfolio because you're having to make all these decisions, even if you're not the manager. They're going to call you and say, "Hey, what about how the
Yeah.
toilet's broken? What do we do here?" Whatever. So it's again, there's this time for money trade still even with that. And then also taxes, as I mentioned, are a really big deal. And then for a lot of people, it comes down to, when you are financially free, how is it you want to live? How do you want to spend your time? And also, what sort of legacy do you want to leave? Do you want to leave money to your kids? Do you want to leave stuff to your favorite charity? What sort of impact do you want to make on the world when you're gone? So a lot of people that I talk to, they're thinking through a lot of these things and just really trying to say, okay, I'm into my career. I'm doing well. I want to leave my job, but how am I going to have, am I gonna have enough money? And if I have enough money, what sort of legacy or family, generational wealth or some sort of gift to the world am I going to give? And so I think that, those are all really, really valuable things. And I think when you hang out with people that are wealthier than you, it actually helps you to understand what wealthy people are dealing with.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a tip for life. If you want to get where anybody else is, let's say, for me, one thing I do competitive Spartan racing. So I like to go out and run. And
Yeah.
in order to get better at that, I have to train, but I have to get around and learn and read and try to get around other people that are really good racers. Cause I'm going to pick up tips from them, right? I'm going to pick up little fitness tips. I'm going to pick up little things that they do, how they train, and what are the things that they're working on. And so it's like that when you get around people that are wealthy or people that are a few steps ahead, or even in business or in real
Yeah,
estate,
absolutely.
it really pulls you up. So there's this saying by Jim Rohn that you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So it's really important that if you have a lot of negative people around, or you just kind of look at who's around you, and almost to like, how active are they in fitness? Are they overweight? Are they somebody are they growing themselves both, in their financial education as well as their personal development? Are they really trying to make the world a better place? And those are all things you can look at. And if the answer is, well, that's not the case, then you need to maybe find a new circle. You maybe need to find, if you're the smartest person in your room, it's time to find a new room, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And you unpacked a bunch of stuff there that I think is absolutely critical. And it really just comes down to, your network is your net worth. And if you can really dive in and connect with people who are just better than you, then you get better, right? Like it's
Yeah.
pretty simple. So when you're doing this syndications, I mean, we were just talking a few minutes ago about how your LinkedIn profile is a little bit outdated, and you went from 100 million to 200 million, and so you guys are absolutely crushing it right now. What are you guys doing that's different than what other people are doing, if anything?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we do is, we're just trying to really develop a long-term partnership with investors. And I think in business and in life, you'd think everybody has a long-term approach and is trying to really treat people well. But a lot of people, they look at relationships, they look at business as being very transactional, right? Somebody comes into your store and they buy something and then they leave. But great business people, great business leaders, just great people, I think really look and see what is the overall experience somebody has of working with you. When you go to your favorite restaurant or you go to Starbucks, you get your favorite drink, generally the attitude of the workers are going to be a certain way. That they're going to make your drink with a fair amount of accuracy. They're hopefully going to get it right. So you have a certain level of expectation. And I think with investors that we work with, a lot of people have never invested in real estate before, or they've only really done maybe a single family house or other sorts of things. So I think that when I can really kind of walk them through the expectations and say, hey, this is what our process is. We're not looking to raise $100,000 from an investor one time. We're hoping that 5 years, somebody, from now, somebody would say, I've had a great experience. The performance and the communication has been great, because you get a great performance, but if you can't get hold of anybody, or it's,
Yeah.
something, bad happens in a deal and you didn't hear about it for 6 months, that's a bad experience. That feels really bad. I've had that experience as a passive investor. And so I just try to really create be a person who tries to treat other people like they would like to be treated, and say, hey, this is going to be a long-term type of thing. And we've been able to get a lot of referrals through that. A lot of referrals have come through friends and family and different things like that. So I found that, as you treat people well, you have good performance, you try to follow up with people, you just really try to do the right thing. Over time, there's going to be more people that want to work with you. So, and I know with you guys, with your business, that's what you guys have experienced as well, because you treat people well and you're, really trying to add value for the long term. And that's really the best way to do business. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that you said that a lot of people um, haven't done the real estate investing in before, and it's interesting because when you're in this world, right, and you're talking to people every day, it's hard to sometimes remember that there's a whole world of people out there that you're not talking to that have absolutely no idea what you're talking about,
Yeah.
and so to say I was going through this with an investment that I was positioning my dad into. I've been on him for years about getting into some real estate investing because he's paying way too much in taxes. And I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
this is a really good, you got a great service job. You're making over $1 million. You're writing $400,000 checks to Joe. Like, what are you doing? Like, come on. So get into something like this where you can, And there's a hesitation there. And I want to ask, like, why do you think that there is that hesitation to jump into real estate investing?
Yeah, so I think when people think of real estate investing, they think of owning a rental house, or they think of flipping, or they just have a different connotation. If you look at the financial space or Wall Street, I used to be an investment advisor for a few years, and now I say I'm a recovering investment advisor because there's a big difference between Wall Street and Main Street. Wall Street really, in my opinion, is set up to take fees and just really kind of have a transactional type of relationship over time. It says something like up to 40% of somebody's investment returns can be taken through fees without them necessarily knowing, just because of the small, let's say if the returns are 6 or 8% per year and they're taking 3% per year, and it's some of these fees are hidden fees. So a lot of people just really aren't educated on it. And I think that I always I tie to the statistic. I think that 98% of people that should be doing multifamily syndication, which is just a fancy way of saying we, pool funds together and we go buy this property, buy a larger property, and then the investors are very passive. It's also in self-storage or mobile home parks or other things. But 98% of people that, they've just never heard of this. They just don't know that's a thing. But Wall Street spends billions of dollars per year educating us about traditional investments. And it's traditional just because they say it's traditional. And the interesting thing is when you say real estate is actually like real assets, right? Actually owning physical real things. Wall Street, it's like it's just owning paper. All you really own is paper. And so there are ways that you can actually roll your self-directed IRA or a 401k, a lot of times with most companies, into something that you can actually manage and actually own physical assets also. So I think it's just really education. A lot of people don't really understand it's there. A lot of people that aren't as wealthy, and when I say aren't as wealthy, don't have a net worth of 5 million or more. They a lot of times don't have a lot of friends that are doing things like this. They don't know people that are doing it. If people are more wealthy, I mean, the highest percentage of people that are worth over 100 million, their net worth is in commercial real estate. It was 26% based on this study that showed the highest percentage of it was commercial real estate. So I think, education is power, knowledge is power, and we're just not educated. And what we are educated on is very biased Wall Street stuff that billions of dollars of marketing is spent on. So stocks and bonds, I mean, I see incredible risk in both right now, where they could come down, especially stocks 50% in a 12-month period, and it's happened. 40-60%. So I think it's important to look at different strategies, especially with inflation, and just be open to new ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great answer. And I really liked what you said. If they're not up there, they probably don't have the friends that are doing it. And if they don't have the friends that are doing it, then they're not getting better with it. So that makes a lot of sense, because it ties right back into what you were saying earlier about you're the average of your 5 closest friends.
Right.
We've talked about, and you've mentioned it 3 or 4 times now, about taxes. So let's dive into that a little bit. So as a syndicator, do you deal with 1031, and what are your big frustrations with the taxes as they currently are, and some of the solutions that are out there right now?
So yeah, I'm just going to speak from a syndication standpoint. I know you have a lot with the DST that you guys are doing, which is exciting too. I'd love to learn more about that as well. So as a syndicator, like I said, I share this. We have 2 buckets, right? You've got your income bucket of how you're making money, in your job or in your business, and that's taxed kind of at normal rates, however it's taxed. The other bucket really is the investment inside. All right. So if you're doing stocks or you're doing real estate or different things, well, there's a way potentially you can pay pretty much no taxes by deferring those taxes through something called cost segregation.
Mm-hmm.
And what it does is, for example, we have a deal right now where somebody invests 100,000. We're projecting about an $80,000 year one passive loss on paper. So it doesn't mean somebody's lost 80,000. It just means you can bring all the depreciation forward to year one. And so it's really great to offset other gains. So for example, if somebody sold a house and, again, run all this by your CPA, I'm not giving anybody in specific tax advice, but
Hashtag not a financial advisor.
yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, give all those disclaimers, whatever. So, but if somebody sells a house and they have an $80,000 gain, they could potentially invest 100K into a deal like this one I'm mentioning and be able to reduce their taxes or defer them for 5 years for the life of that deal by 80,000, which is great. So again, if you can just defer taxes, you can invest more, you can get more. It's just a lot of it's just a deferral game. The other thing that's really magical, and I kind of touched on this earlier, is there's something called the real estate professional designation. Most people don't know about this, but it's in the IRS tax code. Even a lot of CPAs don't know about this, but it allows you that if you are a real estate professional, meaning you're like a 1099 real estate agent, or you spend more time, maybe you have a real estate company, or you just spend more time working on real estate. It's got to be 51% of your time and at least 751 hours a year. But it allows you to take all these passive losses and actually, instead of just applying to this bucket over here, you can actually move them over here to your ordinary income. So I was able to do that the last few years of my job I was working, my consulting job. I was able to bring all that over, and I was able to save about 150,000 in taxes I would have paid. So you can also do this too if your spouse is a real estate professional. So it works very well if one spouse is a physician or some sort of high earner, and the other one is a real estate professional. It allows you to actually potentially reduce or pay potentially zero taxes on the other side as well. So again, no specific tax advice, but look up the IRS designation, the real estate professional.
Yeah, I'm gonna go look that up because I have not heard of that before. Like, spoken it to me like that. The way that I kind of understood it is that you could basically use like any sort of 1099 and just write off all of your expenses. But explain the loss part of it a little bit more. Is it just like
Yeah. Yeah. So it's the 1099 where you can write off any expenses. That's with any business. So if you have a business, you can write off, pens or travel or any sort of, consulting or any expenses you have related to your business. Anybody can do that. But if you qualify as this real estate professional status, any sort of passive tax depreciated losses. And what I mean by that is when you buy a house, the IRS says there's a depreciation on the house. It is over 27 and a half years. You can write off the entire cost of the house. So every year you write off that portion of it. So around 3% per year or whatever that is percentage
as an
wise.
investment property, correct?
Even as a place where you live, you write it
Even
off
as a
because there's
primary?
even as a primary. So that's a normal tax write off that you get for owning a house you live in. So you can write that off. You can also write off the loan, some of the interest expense on the loan. So again, there's a couple things you can write off there. But when it comes to a commercial building, and I'm going to get a little nerdy here, so put your nerd hat on.
Heck yeah.
This cost segregation study, you basically break how it works is we hire an engineering firm. It costs a few $1,000s. It makes sense. Doesn't make sense necessarily for a house, but when you have a 300 unit apartment complex like we work with, hire a firm to come in. They break down the property into 4 parts. So we have the land improvements, the building, and the equipment. And they all have depreciation schedules. Now, the land and the land improvements don't necessarily depreciate at all, but the buildings and the equipment do. So typically it's a 5 to 15-year schedule on the buildings and the equipment. But with this thing called bonus or accelerated depreciation, you can actually bring forward, instead of 5 or 15 years, you can bring all of that forward to year 1. So that basically allows you to capture the future depreciation today, and you can basically use it as a loss today. Well, and the question what people might ask, well, if it's just a loss for today, what happens when you sell the property? Well, you do have something called a recapture where you have to pay it later. But let me give an example of why this actually works well. If somebody puts 100,000 into a deal, they get an $80,000 passive loss. They can use that against other sorts of passive gains. Again, assuming somebody is not a real estate professional, just again on this bucket over here, which is the investment side. And then let's say over 5 years, the 100,000 becomes 200,000, right? The deal's done very well. This property sold, you have $100,000 gain, and you've got some of the passive stuff or the other losses you had to recapture because when you sold later. So you have some gains you have to deal with here, right? So when you sell, though, you can actually take the $200,000, you can put it into new deals. You'll have more depreciation that you can take advantage of there. There are some changes potentially happening in the laws. We're not sure if they're going to continue with a full scale of the bonus or accelerated depreciation. My thought is it will likely be continued, but at least for the next year or two, you can really rack up as much of these passive losses as you can. And then again, for all the money that you would have paid in taxes, you can actually be investing that over the nenext 5 years, and you would have actually gotten more gains on that money in the meantime. So it's not only do you not pay taxes, you can defer the taxes, but there's also the gain of the money that you have now that you wouldn't have had that you can actually invest in the meantime, which is pretty great.
So you're basically using the cost seg studies to offset the sales that you're doing from previous deals. So you have a deal, you sell it, you 1031 into a new deal, and then you do a cost seg study to write off the gain that you would have had for the deal that you have carrying forward?
Yes and no. So it's not a 1031 is a more rigid structure that basically you sell a property, you put it with a third party called a accommodator. You have
Right.
45 days to identify a new property. This doesn't involve 1031 at all. 1031s are great, and we do work with 1031 investors typically if they have 500,000 or a million. But some people just will sell. So this doesn't even require a 1031. It's just imagine the same calendar year you have a sell. Let's say somebody sells a property, they've got $100,000 gain. If they can just invest in another deal that they can get passive losses for this year, they can use those against their gains. So again, it doesn't require any sort of special structure to do that. It's just basically a buy and a sell. And then, with this cost segregation study that's done by our group, it's not really any action that investors necessarily take, except they get the form to their CPA and they work with it. But yeah, exactly.
So let's say you sell a property in January and you buy a property in November, and you have you have 1 month of the in that calendar year. Do you get the entire 80% of the depreciation because it's not you can just depreciate the whole thing in one?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. And the reason why is it's basically, the IRS works on calendar years. So again, yeah, you sell a property in January, then that's why, it's important to think about, and this is, I'm sure for a lot of your clients as well, to just think about tax planning all throughout the year. So if you have gains or you have property, a lot of people are selling properties now. And when someone sells a property, it is important to think about, okay, if I have some gains over here, how can I use some real estate to offset other properties? I got to hear Robert Kiyosaki in person last year, wrote the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and he was talking about, hey, if I make $1 million on a business deal, I basically got to put $4 million into some sort of a real estate deal or some other type of deal to be able to offset the gain, right? Because he is a real estate professional. He was looking for, and he's got some different ways that he does it. He's not necessarily doing syndication, but again, this is something that wealthy people really think about, because there becomes a real kind of art to tax strategy. And there actually are tax strategy firms. Some of them can be kind of expensive, where you can pay 10 to 75,000 a year, but they can really be helpful. I know a lot of people that are selling businesses, and there's things called installment sales. There's other things you can do to try to kind of spread that over time. But yeah, I think it is really important throughout the year to think about how you're planning for offsetting any sort of gains you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're doing over here at Capital Gains Tax Solutions is we're using the Deferred Sales Trust, not to be confused with the Delaware Statutory Trust, which is basically just a 1031 into a REIT. But the Deferred Sales Trust, which allows you to sell assets, and it's like kind of agnostic, so you can diversify. So you sell real estate, you can go into stocks, bonds, or a business, or hard money loans, or back into real estate when you want, without those 45, 180 days to close. And since you don't have to go back into like kind, you can sit in kind of liquid securities or liquid investments until you find the deals that hit you over the head, and then you can do the cost seg studies on top of that in order to capture the depreciation within the whole business trust. And so it's a really unique strategy that partners well with, especially with cost seg people, because they're our best friends, because cost seg and bonus depreciation is amazing, and it's like one of the best reasons to get into real estate. And so if you couldn't do all that kind of stuff, it wouldn't be a 10 out of 10. But since you can, it gives you flexibility, timing, optimal timing, cash flow, diversification, the ability to cost seg, and all that good stuff. And you guys can learn all about that at the Capital Gains Tax Solutions website, or we have a mastermind every Friday at 10 a.m. Just go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com and sign up for the mastermind group every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific time and 1 p.m. Eastern. So we'd love to have you guys there. So Bronson, where can people find you?
So it's really been great being on the show today. I wrote a guide to basically multifamily investing, but it's called The Single Best Investing Strategy During and After a Pandemic. So you can kind of see it here if you're watching it, but it's at BronsonEquity.com. And I'd love to connect with anybody about tax solutions or investing. You can basically find me on social media as well, LinkedIn and Facebook. I'm pretty involved on those. And also, do a fair amount of stuff on YouTube as well, just under Bronson Hill. But it's great being with you, man. Really enjoyed this. A lot of fun talking about it. I love talking about reducing taxes and making more money. So
is there tax strategies in your book?
Yeah, there's tax strategies in there. I mean, it basically just talks about one of the benefits of multifamily investing as being tax strategy. But we don't, obviously I'm not a CPA, but we will talk with people about their situation and kind of
Of course.
consider their tax implications and kind of what they're looking for and trying to make sure that, it's a good fit to work with somebody. And just like you guys, trying to making sure, you have a way to really add value to what someone's goals are.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So if you are interested in that and all, go to bronsonequity.com. That's BRONSON equity, EQUITY.com. Go grab a free copy of the new ebook from Bronson Hill. And subscribe to his podcast, Mailbox Money Podcast. I didn't even talk about that.
That's okay. Yeah. We got it. Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the show. I'm going to plug it really quick because
Okay.
I can. So tell me a little bit about the podcast and what exactly you guys do.
Yeah, so Mailbox Money is just about how do you develop actual passive income. A lot of stuff that's sold as passive income is not actually passive, and so how do you do something that you can grow your wealth without taking up more of your time and really be able to take advantage of inflation, take advantage of what's happening right now in the economy. There's going to be a huge transfer of wealth, and so I interview people just talking about how this is happening. We had somebody come on about how you can pay zero taxes and just different strategies in relation to wealth and wealth preservation and growth. So yeah, it's a fun show. We would have a good time.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to be on there at some point. It's a goal of mine.
Yeah,
So.
great.
So definitely. And you guys can find that at on iTunes.
Yeah, iTunes, YouTube, any other
YouTube.
place you get podcasts. We do it video and audio. So YouTube's for video, or you can go, all the audio places where you can get audio podcasts.
Cool. Awesome. And that's Mailbox Money Podcast. And again, go grab a copy of Brunson's book at bronsonequity.com. And if you guys want to learn more about the Deferred Sales Trust, go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Remember, guys, it's about tax flow, not just cash flow anymore. So be on top of that. So Bronson, thanks so much for your time, man. Any parting words for the audience?
I mean, I think we talked about a lot of great stuff. I think the biggest thing is just really, take time right now to educate yourself. I don't want to be a doomsday person, but I mean, there is so much stuff going on right now. It's really important that you pay attention to the economy, and we shouldn't just be real estate investors or certain asset classes. I mean, they've created 30 to 40% of all the currency in existence just in the last couple of years. So things are really changing on the macro level. And so we do an inflation panel once a month where we are inflation or multifamily. We talk about kind of these issues as well.
That's cool.
So anyway, but no, it's really great to be with your audience and looking forward to connect. And I just love connecting on this stuff. So
yeah, absolutely. Can people go to the panel, or how does that work?
Yeah. So how they sign up is they just go, if they download the guide, the single best investing strategy during and after a pandemic at Bronson Equity, they'll get notified about upcoming panels and events.
Awesome. And are these live panels? Are they Zoom or?
Yeah, they're virtual. So we've had some pretty awesome folks. I mean, in the financial world, we had a guy named George Gammon. We've had Rick Rule, who's a metals guy, and we've had a couple of the real estate guys and other folks that, I mean, in real estate and in economics, we're starting to get kind of people that are more well known, which is really fun. So I get to moderate that, which is always nice.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, we will definitely be checking that out over here. BronsonEquity.com. And Bronson, thanks again so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it. And thanks again, everybody, for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. As always, we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the Deferred Sales Trust is the best way to grow your wealth. Please rate, review, subscribe. Thanks again for all of your time. Thanks, Bronson, for everything that you do and for everything you've done today, and all the value you provided to our audience. And thanks again for your time. And we'll see you on the next one.
Awesome. Thanks, Pearson. Great.